Mistreated me. I saw people that I'd had wonderful experiences with. Everything.
You feel it, you live it, it's within you. It's not just watching it with your eyes, okay? It's living it.
We know what sets it off. There are areas in the temporal lobes here above the ears where if you stimulate them electrically or with fluctuating magnetic fields, you can induce this life review. So it seems that when you come close to death and there's this massive random firing of cells, if you've got that random firing happening in these parts of the temporal lobe, you will set off this review.
But what if people see events during their life review that they could never have known before? Evert ter Beek from Holland learnt entirely new things.
Dat gevoel wat ik daar eens had, heb ik dus nooit meer gekend.
Up there is a feeling of unbelievable mutual love. I have never experienced this feeling since, but I still long for it. If you made me choose, even if my life here was really good and I had everything I could wish for, I would still, without hesitation, choose the other side, just for that feeling again.
Steek ik over en wil ik dat gevoel nog terug hebben.
Now in his 70s, he has survived 5 heart attacks. The final one led to his NDE. He's tired of this life, as his wife Anne explains.
Maar omdat hij nu zo'n groot verlangen heeft om weer naar de andere zijde te gaan.
He has such strong longings to go back to the afterlife that he has tried repeatedly to commit suicide. He then always lies down on the side where his heart is damaged. I have seen him do this several times. If I see that my husband is lying down on the wrong side to die, then I get onto my knees to beg him to turn around.
Op de knieën bij liggen om hem alsjeblieft te smeken om weer om te draaien.
October 99. Evert is in hospital with his 5th heart attack. The doctors have given up.
I was against the ceiling, floating above my own body.
Ik zweefde dus boven mijn lichaam, ik ging door het dak heen.
I was actually floating over my body through the roof. At that moment I had no idea that it was the roof of the hospital, but then I floated above it. I could still see everything that was happening in the hospital. I saw the doctors and the nurses standing by my bed. Suddenly it all got smaller and smaller. It went so fast.
While facing the light, Evert claims he heard a voice. She asks him what he's holding in his left hand. Glittering diamonds. Symbols of those he had loved and lost in his life.
Dit zijn de gevoelens.
These are the feelings of people that I had to leave behind.
Afscheid van heb genomen.
The strange thing that happened that lunchtime was that the people I was thinking of all came to see me in hospital.
Al die mensen zijn bij me op visite gekomen.
On the very edge of death, Evert ter Beek's whole long life passes by in front of his eyes, and old, hidden secret wounds are reopened. Evert saw everything in his life, from birth to near death. Among familiar scenes, he saw a woman and a boy that he didn't recognize.
There were people that I didn't know even existed. Yet I had this feeling that I had abandoned them. They said to me, "You abandoned us when we needed you the most." And they were right.
When Evert returned to life, he couldn't get the faces out of his mind. Dredging deep into distant memories, he began to recognize the woman, a long-lost lover. But who was the boy? Could it be his son?
Kijk, van haar bestaan wist ik dus. Dat wil zeggen...
I started to dig deeper into my memories. She had to be somewhere. Then I remembered her name and her life. It was then that I realized that my relationship with her had had serious consequences. A consequence that I didn't know anything about.
Een gevolg waarvan ik dus mijn leven lang dus niet op de hoogte ben geweest.
Evert eventually located his lost lover, and she confirmed his suspicions. He had fathered a son who had been dead for 30 years. He never knew his son existed, had never even seen him.
Toen ik voor de eerste keer aan zijn graf stond, was het een gevoel van weemoed.
When I stood at his grave for the first time, I felt sadness and sorrow.
Van jarenlang gemis.
It was a feeling that I had missed him for all those years, although I'd never met him.
Dan ga je dus denken aan wat had kunnen zijn.
You question yourself about what could have been.
En wat nooit eigenlijk dus
This is such an enormous loss.
geëindigd gaat worden. Dat draag je de rest van je leven draag je dat
It will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Er is eigenlijk maar één troost.
The only help is to know that we will be united again one day.
Dat je dan dus weer eens een keer.
That's what I thought when I stood at my son's grave for the first time.
Gedachte. Dat ik aan het graf van mijn zoon sta.
But for skeptics, there is one insuperable problem. In spite of the advances of modern medicine, death is still final. It's still the one place from which no one can ever physically return. Susan Blackmore.
We should always remember, of course, that the people who describe near-death experiences haven't actually died. They may have come very, very close to death. They may even, a few of them, have been clinically dead, and there be no heartbeat, no brain signals. But they have come back. They haven't actually died. And we don't know and cannot know what happens to the people who really have died.
As science unravels the brain's enigmas, the relationship between chemical reaction and NDEs is becoming clearer. But those who believe they have been to the other side of death are convinced their experiences are real. And there are still questions for which science seems to have no answer. A man recalling the son he never knew. A blind woman being able to see. Does the answer really lie in another world?
It's very tempting to think that's what's happening as you come close to death, so that's what will happen afterwards. But there's no proof that it will. I've looked into hundreds of cases of this kind, and the evidence doesn't seem to stand up. I think it's more wishful thinking. People want to believe, but let me see the evidence and then I'll change my mind.
But returning through the gateway of death seems to overcome man's deepest fear.
I'm not afraid of death, period. I'm not afraid of pain at all.
Never, ever for 1 second did I regret having had the near-death experience. I feel that it was something that I needed to have in my life. And I think there's a much larger plan that we don't even know the full spectrum of. And I appreciate those I love and wanting to make the most of every moment that I have here, because none of us is guaranteed tomorrow.